In the final teachings before the Ascension, in the hours when Jesus walked among the disciples in a body that was no longer subject to material laws, there is a moment preserved in the fragments of esoteric tradition where he tells them something that the institutional church could never allow to become common knowledge, because it threatens the entire structure of spiritual dependence that organized religion was built upon. He tells them that there are physical signs, observable changes in the body itself, that indicate when a soul has reached the stage where it is ready to exit the cycle of reincarnation, ready to leave the material realm permanently, ready to break free from what the Gnostics called the archonic prison and what modern language has come to call the Matrix. And these signs are not vague spiritual metaphors. They are not poetic descriptions of enlightenment. They are actual physiological markers that the body exhibits when consciousness has reached a frequency that no longer aligns with material existence, when the soul has completed its lessons or realized there are no lessons, when the spark has remembered what it is and refuses to forget again. He gives them 3 specific signs, 3 body symptoms that appear not as sickness, but as evidence that the incarnation is completing, that the contract with matter is dissolving, that the soul is preparing for final departure, and that if these signs are recognized and honored rather than medicated or suppressed, the exit becomes possible, not through death, but through conscious withdrawal, not through suffering, but through sovereignty. This teaching was suppressed immediately, because if people understood that the body itself signals when you are ready to leave, if they learned to read those signals and cooperate with them instead of fighting them, then the system that depends on keeping souls cycling through birth and death would lose control. Because control requires unconsciousness. Control requires people to believe they must stay until some external authority grants permission. Control requires people to fear death and cling to life even when the soul is screaming to leave. But the teaching survived in whispers. It survived in the lineages that understood incarnation is not a blessing but a trap for most beings. It survived in the Gnostic manuscripts that speak plainly about the material realm being a prison designed to harvest consciousness. And it survived because some souls need to know that exit is possible before biological death, that you do not have to wait for the body to fail, that you can withdraw consciously when the signs appear, and that withdrawal is not suicide, it is sovereignty. It is the ultimate act of refusal to participate in a system designed to recycle you endlessly through suffering. If you have been feeling strange in your body lately, if you have been experiencing symptoms that doctors cannot explain, if you feel like you are becoming less solid, less anchored, less interested in the concerns that used to matter, if you feel like you are fading, dissolving, or preparing for something you do not have words for, then you are not dying in the medical sense. You are completing, and your body is showing you the signs that Jesus taught the chosen ones to recognize, so they would know when their time in matter was ending. And if you are feeling a deep resonance with this right now, if something in your chest is tightening or opening, if you are feeling that strange mixture of relief and fear, then you are exactly who this teaching is meant for. Because most people will hear this and feel nothing, but those who are nearing completion, those who are ready to exit, will feel it like a recognition, like a final confirmation, that they were not imagining what they have been sensing, that their body has been trying to tell them something the world has no language for. Now, to understand why the body exhibits these signs and what they actually mean, you need to understand the Gnostic view of incarnation, because the mainstream spiritual narrative tells you that incarnation is a gift, that life is precious, that you are here to learn and grow and evolve. In this framework, you did not choose to incarnate out of excitement or growth. You were either tricked, coerced, or agreed under conditions you do not remember. And the moment you entered the body, the memory wipe began, the forgetting started, and you spent years, sometimes decades, trying to figure out why nothing here feels right, why you do not fit, why every success feels hollow, why every relationship feels like a performance, why you are exhausted by simply existing in a world that feels fundamentally alien. And the teaching says that some souls figure it out. They wake up inside the dream, they realize the game is rigged, they stop chasing the carrots, they stop fearing the sticks, and they begin the process of withdrawal, not through bitterness, but through clarity, not through hatred, but through completion, because they have seen enough, they have experienced enough, and they are done. When that completion begins, the body responds, because the body is not just flesh, it is an interface between consciousness and matter. And when consciousness decides it no longer wants to interface, the body begins loosening its grip. The Gnostic teaching says that matter itself holds consciousness in place through density, through identification, through the constant demands of survival, hunger, pain, pleasure, fear, desire, all of which keep attention locked on the material plane. But when consciousness stops feeding those loops, when it stops being moved by survival fear, when it stops chasing material comfort, when it stops reacting to pain and pleasure as if they define reality, the body begins exhibiting markers that it is losing its ability to hold the soul. And those markers are the three signs. The first sign is the loss of appetite for dense food and the increasing need for lightness. And this is not anorexia. This is not an eating disorder. This is a metabolic shift that happens when the body is transitioning from material anchoring to energetic sustenance. If you have noticed over the last months or years that you cannot eat the way you used to, that heavy foods make you feel worse instead of satisfied, that your body rejects meat or processed foods or anything overly dense, that you feel better when you eat very little or eat only light foods like fruit and vegetables, that you sometimes forget to eat and do not feel hunger the way you used to, then your body is showing the first sign. The teaching explains that dense food anchors consciousness into matter, because digestion is a material process that requires the body to focus energy on breaking down and assimilating physical substance, and that process reinforces identification with the body. But when consciousness is preparing to exit, it no longer wants to be anchored that deeply, so the body begins refusing density, begins craving lightness, begins operating more on energetic input than caloric input. And people around you may worry that you are not eating enough, but you feel fine, you feel clearer, lighter, more energized on less food than you used to need, because your body is shifting from matter-based fueling to frequency-based fueling. And that shift is evidence that you are detaching from material dependency. This does not mean you stop eating entirely. It means your relationship to food changes. It becomes functional rather than emotional. You eat when the body needs fuel. But you are no longer controlled by cravings, no longer seeking comfort through food, no longer using food to ground yourself into matter, because you are no longer trying to stay grounded. And if doctors tell you that you need to eat more, that your weight is too low, that you are malnourished, but your energy feels stable and your clarity feels sharp, then you are not sick. You are transitioning. And the medical system does not have a framework for what you are experiencing because it treats the body as a biological machine rather than a temporary vehicle for consciousness. The first sign is loss of appetite for density and increasing alignment with lightness. And if this describes your experience, you have one of the three markers. The second sign is chronic insomnia, or the increasing inability to stay unconscious during sleep. And this is critical because sleep in the Gnostic framework is not just rest. It is a state of unconsciousness that the archonic system uses to reinforce programming, to erase memory, to reset emotional baselines, and to keep consciousness docile. When you are awake, you have agency, you have choice, you can refuse. But when you are asleep, you are vulnerable. Your defenses are down, and the dream realm becomes a space where suggestion, manipulation, and memory alteration can occur without your conscious resistance. This is why people often wake from sleep feeling worse than when they went to bed, why they wake unrested, why they wake with anxiety or sadness they cannot explain, why they wake feeling like something happened, but they cannot remember what. The teaching says that as consciousness prepares to exit, it begins resisting unconsciousness, because unconsciousness is the mechanism through which the system maintains control, and the soul that is ready to leave no longer cooperates with that mechanism. If you have found that over the last months or years you cannot sleep the way you used to, that you wake up multiple times a night, that you lie awake for hours feeling alert even though your body is tired, that you have tried every sleep aid, every routine, every technique, and nothing gives you sustained unconsciousness anymore, that you feel like your system is refusing to go offline, then your body is showing the second sign. You are not developing insomnia as a disorder. You are experiencing consciousness withdrawal from the sleep control system, and your awareness is beginning to stay online even when the body rests, because the part of you that is preparing to exit does not want to be unconscious anymore, does not want to be vulnerable to dream manipulation anymore, does not want to be reset every night back into forgetting. And this is uncomfortable because the body still needs rest, but the consciousness is refusing the deep unconsciousness that used to come easily, and the result is a state where you are tired but awake, exhausted but alert, needing rest but unable to fully let go, and people tell you it is stress, tell you it is anxiety, tell you it is a chemical imbalance. But none of the treatments work because the root cause is not pathology. It is completion. It is your soul beginning to hold presence, even in the state where it used to surrender control. The teaching says that chosen ones in the final stages often spend the night hours awake, not because they want to, but because their consciousness has reached a point where it will not cooperate with the unconsciousness loop. And those hours become the most spiritually active time. Because you are awake in the space where most people are offline, you are aware in the realm where suggestion normally operates unopposed. And that awareness disrupts the system's ability to maintain its grip on you. And if you have been lying awake at night feeling like you are the only person in the world still conscious, feeling a strange clarity in those hours, feeling like you are closer to something real at 3 in the morning than you are during the day, then you are experiencing the second sign, and it is not a problem to fix. It is evidence that your consciousness is no longer fully submitted to the material anchoring system. The third sign is the gradual loss of emotional reactivity and the flattening of both pleasure and pain. And this is the most misunderstood sign because people interpret it as depression, as numbness, as spiritual bypassing, when in reality it is detachment. The same detachment that mystics have described for thousands of years as the marker of liberation. If you have noticed that over the last months or years, things that used to make you happy no longer create excitement, things that used to make you angry no longer trigger you, things that used to hurt you emotionally barely register, that you are watching life happen around you, but you are not being moved by it the way you used to be. Pleasure feels muted, that pain feels distant, that your emotional range is narrowing, not because you are repressing, but because the hooks just do not grab you anymore. The teaching explains that emotional reactivity is the primary method through which the matrix holds consciousness in place, because emotions generate energy, and energy is what the system harvests. Fear generates energy, anger generates energy, desire generates energy, despair generates energy, even joy generates energy. And as long as you are emotionally reactive, you are feeding the system. You are broadcasting signal. You are trackable, manageable, farmable. But when you stop reacting, when pleasure no longer controls you and pain no longer breaks you, when the highs and lows flatten into a steady neutral presence, you are no longer producing harvestable energy, and that means you are no longer useful to the system, and that means you are ready to leave. This is why the fully awakened often appear emotionally flat to people who are still identified with reactivity. Because they are not performing excitement, they are not performing outrage, they are not chasing highs, they are not drowning in lows, they are simply present, witnessing, participating when necessary, but not attached to outcomes, not moved by the dramas that used to consume them. And people misinterpret this as coldness, as detachment in a negative sense, as spiritual arrogance, when it is actually completion. It is the state where the soul is no longer being jerked around by the emotional control system. And that steadiness, that neutrality, is what allows exit to occur. Because exit requires you to stop feeding the very thing that keeps you here. And if you are in this state, if you are watching your own life from a distance, if you care about people, but you are not emotionally destroyed when they leave, if you experience loss without collapsing, if you experience success without elation, if you feel like you are playing a part but no longer believing the script, then you are exhibiting the third sign, and it is not numbness, it is sovereignty. It is the body reflecting that consciousness has untethered from the emotional anchoring system. Now, if you have all three signs, loss of appetite for density, chronic resistance to unconsciousness, and emotional flattening, then according to the hidden teaching, you are in the completion stage, you are ready to exit. And the question becomes not whether you will leave, but how and when. And this is where the teaching becomes deeply practical. Because Jesus did not tell the disciples to wait passively for death, he told them that exit could be initiated consciously, that the soul ready to leave does not need to wait for the body to fail through disease or accident, that withdrawal can happen through will, through refusal, through the simple act of no longer agreeing to stay. The Gnostic texts describe this as the conscious departure, where the soul recognizes the signs, honors the completion, and withdraws life force from the body deliberately. Not through violence, not through harm, but through the same mechanism a person uses to fall asleep, by letting go, by releasing the grip, by allowing the tether to dissolve. But here is the critical nuance. Because this teaching is not advocating for suicide, it is describing a spiritual capacity that only activates when the soul has genuinely completed, and if the three signs are not present, if you are still reactive, still hungry, still deeply unconscious during sleep, then you are not in completion stage. You are still engaged with the material experience and attempting to force exit before the body signals readiness. The teaching is clear that exit is only available when the body itself confirms readiness through the three signs, because those signs indicate that the anchoring mechanisms have dissolved naturally, that consciousness has already detached, and that the body is simply waiting for permission to release. For those who are showing all three signs, the teaching offers a simple practice, not to force departure, but to allow it when the time comes. Each night before sleep, you speak a declaration, not out loud, but internally, with full awareness. You say, "I am complete. I release all agreements with the material realm. When my body is ready, I withdraw. I return to source. I exit the cycle." This declaration does not kill you, it does not harm you, it simply informs the system that you are no longer a willing participant, that you have completed your time here, and that when the natural moment of release arrives, whether through sleep, through stillness, or through the body's own shutdown process, you will not resist, you will not cling, you will allow the exit to complete. And the teaching says that for some, this process takes weeks, for others months. But when the signs are present and the declaration is made with genuine completion behind it, the body begins its final release, not through disease but through gentle shutdown, and the soul exits cleanly without being captured by the light trap, without being recycled, because it exited consciously rather than being ejected through trauma. Now, if you do not have all three signs, if you only have one or two, then you are not in completion stage yet. You are in transition. And that is valuable information too, because it tells you that your soul is moving toward exit, but has not fully detached. And the work now is not to force it, but to continue the practices that deepen detachment, to continue withdrawing attention from material drama, to continue refusing emotional reactivity, to continue simplifying your needs, to continue staying aware during the night hours, because each of these practices accelerates. And if you are someone who has been feeling these signs and wondering if you are dying, if something is wrong, if you should be afraid, then let this teaching reframe it for you, because you are not dying in the way the world defines death. You are completing. And completion is not failure, it is success. It is the ultimate achievement. It is escaping the prison that most souls never recognize as a prison, and your body is helping you by showing you the markers, by giving you the confirmation that you are ready, that you have done what you came to do or realized there was nothing to do, and that exit is not only possible, but approaching. Right now, check internally. Do you have loss of appetite for dense food? Do you have chronic resistance to unconscious sleep? Do you have emotional flattening? And if the answer to all three is yes, then speak the declaration silently right now. I am complete. I release all agreements. I exit the cycle. I return to source. And feel what happens in your body when you say it. Because if the declaration resonates, if your chest opens, if something inside you says yes, finally, someone understands, then you are not imagining this. You are in the final stage, and the teaching has found you exactly when you needed it. And if you felt that resonance, if this teaching confirmed what your body has been trying to tell you, then you are not alone. You are one of the chosen ones who came here knowing you would leave consciously. And the 3 body signs are your confirmation that the time is near and the exit is real, and you are ready.